The recidivism rate for released prisoners in the United States is between 50 and 60%. Find out how this social entrepreneur tackles the problem with restorative justice. Learn how his Bridges to Life program helps inmates and victims of violent crime. Next on Living Smart.
Production funding for Living Smart with Patricia Gras is underwritten in part by Halliburton.
Hello, I'm Patricia Gras. Welcome to Living Smart, the show designed to help you get the most out of life. Our guest, John Sage, created Bridges to Life, a nonprofit corporation designed to reduce crime by lowering the recidivism rate of released inmates. For his work pairing victims and inmates, John recently received a Social Entrepreneur of the Year award by the Manhattan Institute in New York City.
Central Unit in Sugar Land, Texas houses mostly first-time offenders. Most of these men will go home eventually. The day they have a visitor whose mission is to change their hearts and minds away from a life of crime.
We want you to listen to this and listen to the repercussions of crime, because even lesser crimes hurt people in the same way.
John Sage, former CEO and college football star, founded the Bridges to Life program in 1998. The program brings victims and inmates together face to face. It helps inmates understand how crime affects others and empowers crime victims by allowing them to tell their stories.
A 14-week curriculum, we cover a topic each week. So the topic is discussed, and the topic could be what is crime, accountability, responsibility, faith, forgiveness, confession, reconciliation, restitution, those type issues. And when we first started out, the first thing I said was, somebody said, why do you want to do this? And I said, I don't want someone to go through what we've been through.
In June of 1993, John Sage's sister, Marilyn Sage Mayer, was brutally murdered by two teenagers intent on stealing her car.
The shock was probably the most emotion initially. Shock, and how could this happen? And who did it? Who would do this to my sister?
Marilyn had been stabbed with 3 different knives, hit with a statue, and suffocated while she cried for mercy. One of the most brutal crimes ever seen in Houston. John, who already suffered from clinical depression, hit bottom, this time overcome with intractable grief.
We were 4th and 5th in this family of 8, so we were in the middle. And I spent more time with her my first 21 years of life than the other one person. I guess the biggest thing she did for me, she actually introduced me to Francis when I was in high school. So I feel like now, as I look back, that Marilyn had such a huge influence on my life that she even picked out my wife for me. She just knew a lot of people and had tons of friends, and when she was at her funeral, there was over 1,600 people there, and they thought, the people around the church thought some dignitary had died. Stop lying to each other, tell the truth, for we are parts of each other, and when we lie to each other, we are hurting ourselves.
Always a religious person, John became even more spiritual to cope with the evil he had encountered. He constantly asked God, why?
So that led me to about 5 years of real serious reading spiritual books, meeting with groups, Bible study. I would say kind of a 5-year retreat, or whatever you want to call it, a 5-year journey of deep spiritual studying.
Then he volunteered for a pilot prison program, and it gave him the idea to start his own, based on reconciliation and forgiveness. He started in 2 prisons with 41 inmates.
Now we're in 18 prisons, and this year we'll have about 1,200 graduates.
My daughter, Mitzi, was murdered on her 21st birthday. And to say that it changed my life is really grossly understated.
Paula Kurland is one of 300 volunteers who make up the team of Bridges to Life.
The most difficult thing for me has been taking the responsibility for what I did to my children. Not intentionally, but when I say they lost their mother, they did.
It's been 20 years since the murder, but Paula began to heal when she joined Bridges to Life and was able to forgive the perpetrator and share her own story with inmates.
And then you have people that come in here and give of themselves freely because we truly care what happens to all of you.
And I developed the bad habits of robbing.
Patrick St. Jules is serving time for aggravated robbery. Today he attends the first workshop of the 14-week program. The group discusses taking responsibility for your own actions.
I never visualized what a victim went through. I didn't care what a victim went through. But after hearing their side of the story, it made me think like, I wouldn't want that to happen to me, and I want to get a better understanding or where I'm trying to go in life. I know if I change my pattern, my thinking pattern, I can walk away from this criminal lifestyle. And Bridges to Life is that kind of path that way because, it deals with responsibility, accountability, repentance.
12 weeks later, Patrick is finishing the Bridges to Life course. Only time will tell whether he'll commit another crime when he gets out. But for now, he's hopeful.
Listening to the victims and how they forgive the people who had wronged them. And I was like, if they can forgive a dude who done did these heinous acts to him, which have probably been me in another circumstance, if they can forgive me, why can't I forgive? All the frustration, the pain and anger I had built up in me, I let it go. And now I'm a happier person from it.
Today, the same group discusses restitution, and John has a new revelation which even caught him off guard. The week before, he had spoken to a prison chaplain about his sister's murderer and revealed just how far John Sage had come in his own spiritual journey.
He said, I knew that man. So I'm saying, you knew the man that killed my sister, James Dickerson. He said, yeah. He said, I was his last spiritual advisor before he died. And he also went on to say, he said, I can tell you with 100% certainty the man had faith in God and was a true Christian when he died. And I guess the amazing thing was looking in the mirror at my own reaction, and I was really overcome with joy about this. And then I reflected on it later. 10, 12 years before that, I would have wanted to take the guy and kill the guy and choke him to death. And 10 years later, I'm overjoyed about what I heard about this man. That night I realized it was November the 21st, and that was my sister's birthday.
Sage eventually wants to spread the Bridges to Life program to all prisons around the country.
It's about others. It's about helping others. When you get out of yourself and help others, that's really what life's about.
Thank you, John, for joining us.
It's
great to have you here.
Thank you.
I've always wondered about the title Bridges to Life. Why that title?
Well, it was just a title that came to me. I heard someone speak shortly before that, and she said there's all kinds of half-lives out there, but we're talking about full life. And so the life word came there, and then the bridge was that you got to go somewhere to get there. And I think everyone has to cross a bridge, but the people we work with have a little longer bridge to cross.
And you're trying to help them cross that bridge. Let's define what is restorative justice, because it seems to be a new movement in the criminal justice system. What is it?
Yeah, I think when I first got involved in this about 8 years ago, the term was just, I didn't even know the word until I'd been in it a year, so I didn't know what I was doing, actually.
You didn't know you were doing it.
Right, but the word restore is the key word there, and it's really about healing and restoring the community, the offender, and the victim. There's three elements in a crime, if you think about it. Primarily the victim comes first, and then there's the offender, and then the whole community and society. So restoring those pieces to the extent possible is the objective, and that takes healing, and that takes change, and that takes things like responsibility and forgiveness.
How, John, is that different from what we have now in the criminal justice
well,
system?
The
or what we had
primary,
before?
it goes way back hundreds of years, would be called retributive justice, which is basically punishment. Restorative justice doesn't exclude punishment. Punishment's okay, but in addition to that, there has to be some rehabilitation, some change. But pure retributive justice doesn't really call for any necessary change. It's just kind of the old lock them up, throw away the key type issue that is pure retributive justice.
It doesn't seem to be working because we get more criminals in prisons, more and more.
Yeah, the population in Texas is soared, has tripled since in the last 15 years. The prison population much faster than the normal population.
Let's talk about recidivism. Recidivism is when a prisoner goes to prison, serves time, goes back out, commits another crime.
Right. Comes back to prison.
And your goal was, we got to stop this. We've got to stop this. We have to lower this recidivism rate.
Right. Our goal is to lower it, and we're achieving great strides in that. It's a 3-year study, so it takes a while after they get out to complete the study. But we're seeing a dramatic drop in recidivism of our graduates relative to the norm. Probably in a 3-year period, probably half the norm. Where we're really seeing the biggest drop is in ones coming back for violent crimes. Right now, we have over 3,000 graduates that are out of prison for varying terms of time. And only 1%, only 31 have come back for a violent crime, which is phenomenal.
1%, that's amazing.
Yeah, for a violent crime.
For violent crimes. Let's talk about why it works. Why do you think it works?
Well, there's lots of reasons. At the core of it is human beings coming in and sitting down with other human beings. And our volunteer base is really the core, the key of what we do. The second thing is we do catch these men when they're in a place where they're ready to listen. They know you're in prison, you got to change. It's like, has this been working for you? No, I'm in prison. So there is some desire way down deep in them to change. And then I think the other key elements are the curriculum and the material that we cover, and the fact that victims, it's centered around victim impact, and victims come in and talk about what crime has done to them, creating an awareness of what they do to people. And I think the key word would be empathy. We try to create some empathy in them. Right.
Now, let's talk about some of the powerful stories that you've encountered in your time doing this.
Oh, there's lots of them, and I would mention on both the victim side and the offender side. I mean, on the victim side, we've had many volunteers come in that they really felt like their life was just really in a dark place, heavy depression, and taking medication or help getting therapeutic help. And this process has allowed them to come in and tell their story, allowed them to come in and see the other half, see that offenders are not people that got horns growing out of their head, and they're human beings, and allow them to get out of themselves and help somebody else. So we see a great deal of healing on the victim side for various reasons, as evidenced by the fact they keep coming back and doing. We've got volunteers that have been with us for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years and doing many programs. On the offender side, the stories are many. There's a thread to them that they make a change and they create an awareness. There seems to be an opening of their eyes, an opening of their hearts, and realizing that admitting and realizing they've hurt people, and not only the victim, specific victim, but society, and hurt their family quite a bit.
And you've got some incredible stories, and you shared one with me.
Yeah, one I might share again with you is a particular guy came. We have a luncheon every year, and we asked the graduates to come back. And this guy, actually, he was coming in from other side of San Antonio, and he was running late. And he got there right after the luncheon ended, and he came in, and he hadn't seen him in years. He's been out 5 or 6 years, and he had been in prison in 3 different states. He had been in for attempted capital murder. I mean, this was a
career criminal
type. And he looked the part, and he acted the part when we met him up in the prison up in East Texas. And anyway, he had turned his life completely around. He hasn't ever been back to prison, hadn't been arrested. He got married when he got out, a child. He's now a volunteer firefighter and a volunteer storm fighter. And he told me something very powerful. He just teared up, and he said that he's on record for saving, I think, 10 lives so far. He said, every time I save a life, I dedicate it to Bridges to Life because they saved my life.
Well, amazing. What a nice thing to hear. You wrote an article called A Deeper Surrender. Do you think that you have to surrender to forgive?
I think so. I think surrender is the first step of a lot of things. I mean, until you surrender to something bigger than yourself, I don't think you can get to the other steps. And part of lack of forgiveness is just wanting to be right. And until you surrender, being right's a big thing. Holding your position and getting payback is a big thing. But I think surrender opens the door to a lot of other things that you can make spiritual and personal progress.
And in this case, surrender to a higher being or higher
right.
power.
And
that
to my
you
case,
can't handle it all by yourself.
Exactly, and that you're really just a little small piece in this whole cosmic universe.
That's
and,
right.
There's something going on a whole lot bigger than we are.
That's right. Now, I know that you deal with inmates who are not Christians or different religions, and some of them are agnostic, and you're helping everyone. How does your program focus more on faith versus religion?
Well, we do focus on faith and a belief in something bigger than us, and specifically belief in God, because we talk about that in our curriculum. But I think one of the keys is we meet them where they are. We don't make an issue of it. We don't try to convert them, proselytize, evangelize overtly to them. In other words, we say, we accept you right where you are. You can be an atheist, an agnostic, a Buddhist, a Muslim, Jewish, or Christian, or not know what you are. And that's fine. Just come on in here, and we want to sit and talk to you.
These are human lessons.
Right.
Spiritual
and
lessons.
we even asked non-Christians, we have New Testament scripture in our, we had said, read this as a moral story. Don't worry about it. We're not trying to strong arm you. And the guy asked me that Monday night, raised his hand about the same question you're asking me. I think he was a Muslim, but and then one of the volunteers with me said, let me tell you, he said, the last group I had a Jewish man, a Buddhist, and two guys who said they're Christian. One guy didn't know what he was. He said it worked out great.
Now, you were on a spiritual journey for 5 years. In a way, you're on a spiritual journey all your life, but for 5 years you were searching for an answer. What would you say is one of the most important life lessons you learned from that experience, from doing that research?
Well, that was pretty intense. I think that surrender issue, really surrendering, and lessons like humility, and lessons like God's love for us, and understanding that at a deep level, accepting where I was in life at that time. I think gratitude is a huge, huge issue, and forgiveness for me. Forgiveness was part of that journey. It kind of came toward the end of that journey. Forgiveness specifically for the people that killed my sister, but then that trickles down to a lot of other smaller matters and holding grudges and things like that.
Tell me about the program. What we heard a little bit about what it entails, about the curriculum and how you came up with that.
The program is centered around volunteers coming into prison, and then it's built in small groups. We break the project up into smaller groups of 6 to 10 inmates in a group. So if we do 50 inmates in a project, we might do 5 or 6 groups of them. And each group has 2 to 4 volunteers in it. And we do follow a structured curriculum. We meet 14 times, and we cover topics in the curriculum like accountability, responsibility, confession, repentance, forgiveness, those kind of things. And each week builds on another because you can't confess something if you hadn't taken accountability, responsibility. You can't forgive something, so we get it out there on the table first.
Where do you think is the power in the curriculum?
The power in the curriculum is presence by outsiders. The power is in the questions that we ask, and the power is in listening and awareness,
Really
and the power is in the victim impact part.
Have you had any wow moments in those 8 years?
Yeah, lots. Well, yeah, when you see a guy come in and he's got a scowl on his face, and he looks like he hates everybody in the world and really doesn't want to be there, and in a short period of time, 2 months, 3 months later, you see a man's eyes change, his face change, his body language, what he says change, and it doesn't happen overnight, but in a lot of them it's very dramatic. And those are wow moments, and some of the things they say back to us are wow moments.
I would assume, John, that a lot of them have a lot of shame. That's a powerful emotion.
Yeah, huge amount of shame.
Share with me how you help them deal with their shame.
Well, shame, simply put, is thinking I'm a mistake, and guilt is thinking I made a mistake. And we try to talk to them the difference about, yes, you have to feel guilt for what you did. It was wrong, but shame doesn't have to cover you and stay there and think that you're a mistake. And I think that's probably separate the person from the act, and try to lift some of that shame, because that masks everything. If they're covered in that shame, they're not going to really get anywhere else.
Have you had inmates ask you, why do you care? We're just throwaways.
Yeah, lots of them, and they ask the volunteers that all the time. They mainly say, why do you come here? And not only why. When we first did this, we told them we were going to come back every week, and they told us later they didn't believe us. They thought we'd show up one time, 2 times, and I think we've had them get up at graduation and still ask the question at the end. We don't understand why you would come see people like us. And Basically, we tell them that we care about them, that we feel like they're equals with us as far as they're children of God like we are, and they're human beings, and that we have a vested interest in having them make some changes to help society and help them.
Now, do you learn anything from them, from the inmates? I mean, was it kind of a surprise when you first started going to these meetings and listening to what they had to say?
I think the biggest thing you learn is gratitude, because you learn the lives that they've been through, their upbringing, and for the most part, extremely different than myself or yourself or what we've experienced in varying degrees. So I think learning gratitude and learning what they've been through and learning their side of the equation and how they've had to deal with things. I really have never met a stupid guy in prison. They have natural intellect. There's a lot of them that are not educated, but they have a lot to offer and a lot to say, and their viewpoints, once they open up, that's the key, is getting them to open up.
Give me examples of some of the things they may say to you that were like,
wow.
Wow, yeah.
Well, you hear a lot of the prison talk and the vernacular.
Right.
Those are not really wow. I was going to say they educate you in a whole different language and all, but some of the deep things they say and when they really talk about the realization of who they've hurt and how bad they've hurt someone, and they break down and they realize, they shed tears a lot of times, and their open honesty is great, and they teach you a lot about humanness, just being human.
You kind of create a safe space for them to talk and open up for the first time, probably.
Right. We work on a whole exercise in our orientation with them of a safe place, meaning that people are going to come in there and be non-judgmental, open-minded, honest. Confidentiality is the probably number one word of our safe place. Everything said in our small group has to be left in the small group. It's the only thing that we will dismiss them for just on the spot if they report back in someone talked about another person's business.
Let's talk about volunteers. What does it take to become a volunteer?
A volunteer is just a willing heart and someone to listen. Like I told my wife, she started volunteering last year. I said, you're a good parent, you're a good listener, and presence are the key things. The technical part of it is you have to go through security check, and you have to go to a 3-hour security mandatory training by the state, and then we have a training session. And we usually, now we've got experienced volunteers where we can put the new ones in with the experienced volunteers. But as far as professional training, no, it's you can be an amateur and come involved. Someone recently told me amateur, this comes from a Latin word of love, and that you can be a loving person and come in with little or no experience and be very effective at this.
Amazing. Now, why do you think Bridges to Life is so successful? I mean, if the recidivism rate goes down that much, you are doing something right. You're doing a lot right. Yeah,
and particularly when it goes down in those new crimes and violent crimes. There's a lot of technical violations, which I don't need to get into right now. It comes back for just breaking some rules. But overall, it's the power of people coming in to see them. It's the faith element. It's the element of awareness of hurting another person. I once had a guy that was getting out the next morning at graduation. He said, I'm going back to Dallas. He said, I don't even want to hurt a roach. I mean, he said, he said his heart is see, in prison, and they become callous and they cover over. And I've had guys say, I haven't felt in 10 years. I haven't had a feeling in 15 years. I'm totally numb. And this takes those layers of that scar tissue, so to speak, around their heart, and they can feel again. And if you can feel for a person enough, then or feel for other people, you won't hurt someone or you won't do those things.
You're
it's not as likely to.
Basically teaching how to feel again, which is
That's
amazing.
A big part of it.
How is it different from, I know there are other rehab programs in our prisons. How is this one unique, do you think, or different?
I think there's a lot of good programs in prison. The uniqueness of this probably is the victim impact portion is very unique. And then we are faith-based, but we're not preaching
religious.
and
You're not religious.
I think that's real important because my personal opinion, philosophy is these guys have all been exposed to religion a good bit, and some of them have kind of rebutting religion. But I think love is something that's pretty universal.
That's wonderful. And I want to ask you, how do you know you're living smart?
How do I know I'm living smart? Well, one of your staff members called and asked me that way back before I ever met you. And I said, well, when I know that I'm not that smart, when I realize I'm not that smart. And that's sort of a paradox, but there's some truth to that. I think living smart's different at different ages. I mean, I'm 58 now. Living smart's different for me now than it was when I was 30 or 40. I think in the big picture, you have to understand yourself inside of yourself, and then living smart's trying to match your external actions in your life to your heart. But I think it's an ongoing process. I think it takes continuous monitoring to know that you're living smart for yourself. And living smart is different for different people, but I guess I would say matching that inside with your external, just be who you are.
Thank you so much, John Sage, for being with us. It's an honor to have you here. And you can learn more about John Sage by going to our website, houstonpbs.org/livingsmart. There you'll also find a complete resource list, and feel free to share your own views on the subject of restorative justice. You can call us with your comments at 713-743-8513 or email livingsmart@houstonpbs.org. And that's our show for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember to live smart. I'm Patricia Gras. Have a fabulous week.
Production funding for Living Smart with Patricia Gras is underwritten in part by Halliburton. For a transcript of this program, send $6.95 to the address on your screen. Please include the name of the guest.